no ill wishes and no hate and no disrespect whatsoever to any of the good people in the United States. All the real Christians, all the real people, all the real decent people that mean no harm to anybody. I wish you all nothing but love, respect, longevity. That said, I would like to see the whole regime of America turned to ash. At this point, as far as I'm concerned, they're nothing but a bunch of reptilian shapeshifters. Yeah, I'm going to say it. Maggots.
In the Middle East. But before going there, here is many of our audience should understand what's going on the other part of the aisle. I'm talking about the mainstream media, how they picture the situation, the conflict between the two parties. Here is what was said on Fox News, Scott.
Clashed up with our Israeli allies, and we saw the fruits of that in the 12-day war last year, where the Iranians were completely defenseless against both the Americans and the Israelis, and they still are, and they know it. And so, with the Abraham Lincoln in the region, with George H.W. Bush getting close, with all of the additional Patriots and THAADs that we've put in, we are really prepared for anything. And then it kind of gets up to the Iranians. The president's talking to them as well. He has a deal for them, which is no nukes, no support for terrorists, and reduce your missiles. If they take it, okay. If they don't, then he's prepared.
But you've got to make...
Yeah. But before going on, please hit the like button, helping us reaching more people. Scott, when it comes getting back to the 12-day war, in my opinion, and right now if something happens, that both parties, their main point is, their strong point would be their offensive power. It's not the defensive power. On both sides you see some sort of fragility to defend themselves against the offensive, when it comes to the fighter jets, when it comes to the missiles. What is your understanding of the current situation between the two?
Well, first of all, Israel didn't win the 12-day war. Israel launched a very treacherous surprise attack using American diplomacy as a cover. It was a knockout blow. This was Israel's Sunday punch. It didn't work. They also, in addition to the air power that was brought to bear, they had extensive covert operations with drones, a giant network of agent-operated drones that inflicted a lot of damage on Iranian targets as well. The Iranian government was able to recover very quickly, assert control over not just domestic political affairs, but also over their military, get the military back up and running, and almost immediately initiating offensive operations, counter-offensive operations against Israel that were sustained throughout the totality of the conflict. By the time the war reached its conclusion, Iranian missiles were able to hit any target in Israel they wanted to hit. And the Iranians prove this every day. The Israelis, on the other hand, people say it's not a defensive war. I'm pretty sure you heard about this while you were in Iran, where the Iranian Air Force was still flying. And near the end of the war, they were engaging Israeli aircraft with radar. They would get a radar lock, and this would cause the Israeli aircraft to break off their attack. So the ability of Israel to strike Iran degraded significantly, and Iran's ability to strike Israel kept escalating. This is why Israel begged Donald Trump to bring an end to the conflict, and they did. So right off the bat, the analysis is fundamentally flawed. Iran was hurt. Of course, anybody would be hurt. I mean, go to sleep at night, let another nation hit you as hard as they can, and see how you feel. But also, look at Benjamin Netanyahu's hands. near the end of the 12-day war as he's shaking as he realizes what's happening to Israel and that there is no defense. 2 aircraft carriers. Now, the Abraham Lincoln and the George W. Bush are modern aircraft carriers, but I want to remind people that in the Gulf War, Operation Desert Storm, we deployed 6 carrier battle groups to take on Iraq. Iraq is 1/4 the size of Iran. Iraq had 19 mobile missile launchers. We couldn't destroy any of them. With 6 aircraft carriers and thousands of Air Force aircraft deployed in the region. Iraq never threatened the air bases that we were launching from or threatened the aircraft carriers we were launching aircraft from. Unlike the situation will be for the United States if we take on Iran. Every air base that launches aircraft against Iran would be struck, and the aircraft carriers would be hunted down. Whether or not Iran was able to successfully kill them is another issue altogether. But the idea of just sitting there drilling holes in the ocean, launching and recovering aircraft without any fear is an absurdity. We don't have enough airplanes. Iran has, we couldn't stop 19 launchers from launching, 48, 49 missiles into Israel. Iran will launch hundreds of missiles per day into Israel, and there's nothing Israel can do to stop them. This is fantasy that somehow pressure. And then we need to bring something up, and I'm going to hammer this point all day. Okay, there's no such thing as diplomacy when we speak of the United States and Iran. It's a subterfuge. There is no diplomatic solution acceptable to the United States other than regime change. Let me say that one more time, just so people understand. There is no diplomatic solution acceptable to the United States other than regime change. The policy of the United States towards Iran, towards the Islamic Republic, is the same policy that Israel has, that the Islamic Republic is evil and must go. End of story. I mean, and people need to pay attention to the details. 50% of the American negotiating team, first of all, 100% of the American negotiating team is Zionist, pro-Israel. Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. All right? You might as well have Netanyahu sitting down at the table. It's the same thing. They're meeting Netanyahu right now. All of the Zionists in the American administration are meeting with Netanyahu because it's one big Zionistic cabal. Regime change, regime change, regime change. Jared Kushner, who's supposed to be sitting there telling them, look, my father's serious. We could avoid a war. Before he went over to negotiate with Iran, he met with Iranian opposition figures in the United States to form a new government. He is forming a new government as we speak because the policy is regime change, not to peacefully get along. There is no deal that can be made with the United States, none whatsoever. And I think Iran recognizes Iran is going through the motions of diplomacy right now, but you know they that just makes something else clear too. The United States, Iran must get rid of its missiles, especially those missiles that can strike Israel. If Iran got rid of its missiles, especially those missiles that could strike Israel, there wouldn't be an Iran today. It wouldn't exist. The only thing that allows Iran to continue to exist are the missiles it has that can strike Israel. And this is how stupid. I mean, I know people have to be diplomatic. I'm not. So I'm just going to say it straight in my face. If you're an Iranian and you believe anything the United States says, you're stupid. And I apologize if I'm insulting you, but you're stupid. And if you're in the government, you should probably be kicked out of the government. All right? If you're a foreign minister and you think you're going to get a deal, resign. If you're a president and you think the United States will live up to its agreement, resign. Because we won't. We want to destroy Iran. We want to remove the theocracy from power. That's it. There's no plan B. The nuclear thing is just an excuse. We know, look, Tulsi Gabbard said, we know Iran's not producing a nuclear weapon. We know it. And we know that whatever they were doing with that 60% enriched uranium, they ain't doing it today. Because we struck enough facilities, we did enough damage to be disruptive of those processes. But Iran's not pursuing it. Pezeshkian made it clear. He said, we have missiles. We don't need nuclear weapons. Our deterrence is our missiles. Going back to the Iran won't negotiate away its missiles. So this is just an exercise in frustration from my perspective, because I just, the lies being told, nobody in the United States, if you're an American journalist, and you're talking about the possibility of a deal, you're a liar. You're not a journalist, you're a propagandist. Because in American journalism, there's too many issues out there. Why is Jared Kushner meeting with the opposition? Why is Marco Rubio threatening all Americans in Iran to leave? Let's say Scott Ritter went over to a festival, and I'm there now, but now Marco Rubio says, you got to go now, man, or shelter in place, and you got to find a way out of there now. Why? Well, the implication is we're getting ready to bomb. And then Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, the two Zionists, go to the Abraham Lincoln. They leave the negotiating table, go to the Abraham Lincoln, and walk around like some tourists, as if, I'm pretty sure the Iranian Revolutionary Guard had to go change their diapers. They were that scared. I mean, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, I mean, two of the manliest men that ever walked the planet. These guys lift weights. They eat protein. I mean, they are pumped. And watching these two, effeminate-looking Zionists get on the Abraham Lincoln and stumble around like idiots, did it send fear into Iran? I don't think so. Iran's not intimidated by the embarked air wing of the Abraham Lincoln. There's not that many aircraft. Iran's a very, very big country, and it's got a lot of really good defenses. So this aircraft carrier doesn't make them blink at all. Two of them won't make them blink. You'd have to bring all of the American aircraft carriers, and then even then the Iranians would say, we got you, we're ready. It's crazy. There is no diplomacy. I'll just say it again. It's regime change, regime change, regime change. And if you're in the United States and you don't understand that, you're stupid. And if you're in Iran, you don't understand that, you're stupid. Sorry, I'm not a diplomat. But it's time we just got to strip this thing bare. We have to stop pretending that there's something going on that isn't. There is no diplomatic solution here. There's only a military solution. One is a military solution of deterrence, where Iran is able to deter an Israeli-American attack because the consequence of attacking Iran would be so overwhelmingly bad for the attacker that they might as well not attack to begin with. Or they attack and they remove the regime from power. Those are the only two options. There are no other options as long as Israel and the United States continue to support the Greater Israel Project. Because Iran is the biggest obstacle to the Greater Israel Project there is. We come up to term 3. Got to stop supporting Hamas, stop supporting Hezbollah, stop supporting Houthi, start to... Why? I mean, if you want... I'll tell you how you negotiate away Iranian support for Hamas. Get out of Gaza. Free and independent Palestine. Iran will stop. I could negotiate that in a heartbeat. I could sit down and have a treaty arrangement with Iran. A treaty. Binding. With the Iranians. Where they would promise. And there would be verification measures, everything. We could come up with it. I know we could. They would promise to enter a treaty arrangement where they stopped all military assistance and unsupervised assistance to Hamas in exchange for a Palestinian state, a real Palestinian state. They'd do that. Hezbollah. You want to bring Hezbollah down? Israel gets out of Lebanon. It's that easy. Israel gets out of Lebanon. And once Israel gets out of Lebanon, Hezbollah has no more viability inside Lebanon. It's a political party that also can be a resistance movement so long as Israel is occupying Lebanese soil. That's what gives them legitimacy. But the moment Israel leaves, then Hezbollah loses the reason to have this militia. They will disarm. I can get the Iranians to work with me to make that happen. We can negotiate this. Israel leaves Lebanon. Verifiable. United Nations in there making sure it's all done and they don't come back. A treaty arrangement. I could get the Iranians to agree to facilitate the disarmament of Hezbollah and to agree that Hezbollah as a militia, as a resistance movement, no longer exists. We could do that. The Houthi. I mean, first of all, people tend to forget that Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, United States, and everybody else is already at war with the Houthi. I mean, we're trying to crush them. So it's difficult to get the Iranians to back off there when everybody else trying to blow the Houthi into submission. But from the Israeli perspective, a free and independent Palestine, and the Houthi will never launch a missile against Israel or an Israeli ship again. I can get that in a treaty. This is the easiest treaty in the world to get if Israel was a rational state and the United States believed in actual peace. but we don't. And so what we want to do is intimidate Iran into giving up everything so that Israel can do anything it wants to do. That's not going to happen.
Scott, what do we know about, when I was in Iran, they were talking about the J-20 stealth fighter, Chinese fighters. And but overall, from the relationship, from what we've seen, that somehow we can find it in the media, through the talks, the Iranian official are somehow talking about it. What do we know about the scale and somehow the nature of the relationship between Iran and Russia and China in the aftermath of the 12-day war, and how is that improving? Is that remaining the same? What's your assessment on that?
Well, what we do know is that during the 12-day war, there was no formal agreement between Russia and Iran. Everybody said Russia abandoned Iran, Russia let them down. No, actually, in January, Russia negotiated a security framework agreement. Russia ratified it. They were ready to rock and roll. The Iranian parliament didn't, for whatever reason. I mean, I'm not here to denigrate them, but understand the reason why the Russians had their hands tied behind their back when it came to helping Iran is because Iran had failed to ratify the security framework agreement. Well, that error has been rectified, and now there is a security framework agreement. We don't know exactly what it is, classified annex. But, and I don't think it's Article 5 type protection or a Russian nuclear umbrella. Oreshniks are not going to fly if the United States bombs Iran. But the Russians have provided stuff. There's hints. How did the Iranians become so damn good about shutting down Starlink? What's Iran's direct interface with Starlink? Not much. What's Russia's direct interstate for Starlink? Oh, extensive. The Ukrainians use it. That's what all the drones are powered. That's how the Ukrainians communicate, and the Russians have adapted and are using it themselves. So Russia's very good at monitoring Starlink and shutting Starlink down. And those were two skill sets that Iran put on display in spades during this most recent upsurge. Monitoring Starlink. They were able to break down all the connectivity and then shut it down and round them up. I mean, the Iranian intelligence services are good. I give them full credit, but this smelled of Russian assistance. I think you're seeing Russian assistance also being provided in intelligence sharing, defense preparations. We know that the Russians have provided advanced MiG-29 and Su-27 aircraft. These aren't reserve aircraft for export. These are frontline aircraft that Russia, if Russia went to war, these were aircraft that would have flown combat missions on day one. They're not the Su-30s or the Su-57s or the Su-35s, but they're very good. They're advanced fighters with advanced avionics and ready to fly up against NATO style adversaries, easily the equivalent of the F-15 and F-16 aircraft. These are flying in Iran right now. But there's, I don't, why not? Let's get technical. Let's say China, we don't know what's going on. I mean, I don't know what's going on. We know a lot of Chinese aircraft are flying in there. We know that there's diplomatic connectivity, but there's been to the best of my knowledge, no formal acknowledgement of a formal defense relationship between China and Iran. There's informal things taking place. But, and I mean, do you know that the J-20, that this is true, or is it a rumor?
Actually, it seems to me, I have no evidence that there is J-20 stealth fighter.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't know.
Yeah, but let's just assume it was. The way fighters intercept aircraft today, this isn't, World War II dogfights where you send squadrons up and they sort of go, 12 o'clock high, you're vectored in. Radar picks the target and you're vectored in. You're guided in to the target by your own, radars and operations centers that are controlling you, vectoring you in. And then you'll reach out, you'll find it, you'll lock on, and then you'll begin a firing solution. So it's very boring. You're just coming in, and you're going to get a firing solution, and then you're going to fire, and then you're going to break off. It's not the dog fights that everybody's seen. So
I always say you can't manage what you can't see. Monday.com shows you the full picture like that.
The best thing Iran has going for it today is the thing that they've been working on forever. The F-4 Phantom. The F-4 Phantom today can take off from an Iranian airfield, and it can be flown towards a vector. It can be guided. It has avionics that work. It has missiles that work, and it comes in. And it was the F-4 Phantom that was causing the advanced Israeli, I-16s and I-15s to break off, because they got a firing solution. From the Iranian perspective, they have this tool that they've used over and over and over and over again. I mean, it's like second nature. They know how to do this. The Israelis didn't destroy the F-4s. They didn't bomb these airfields. Why? Because the myth of Israeli domination of the airspace is just that, a myth. The Israelis did very targeted attacks. They had momentary periods of time where they could fly in and around Tel Aviv because they were coming out of the Caspian Sea, because they flew through Azerbaijan, and they bypassed all the Iranian air defenses that were looking that way. That mistake won't be made again. But the F-4s and even the F-14s were flying, and they were able to do successful intercepts. What I mean by an intercept, I don't mean shooting down, but to get a lock on, and significant enough for the Israelis to have to break off their attack. So until the Iranians become very adept at these, get those MiG-29s and get those Su-27s in the hands of pilots that are comfortable with the totality of the aircraft, all of the avionics, until they've practiced the integration of those with their radars, their communications, their intercept standard operating procedures, I think the F-4 and the F-14 are going to continue to be sort of the mainstay of Iran's, interception capabilities. Iran's not going to be launching offensive airstrikes. Where the MiG-29 and the Su-27 could come in handy is if they were to try and surge into, an operational box, maybe where, there were refueling aircraft, and try and shoot down refueling aircraft. But that's a different ball game. The Israelis and the Americans both have very good combat air patrols. You're coming into our territory where we've mapped it out. We're safe. But when we come into your territory, into Iranian territory, that's where the existing systems are, and there's replication. There's redundancy. They've been practicing it so much, and that's where the F-4 and the F-14, flying from airfields in western Iran, far from from Israel, longer to strike, they come out and they can project themselves defensively into Iranian airspace and into Iraqi airspace, where aircraft are making because a lot of these missiles are launched, north and south of Baghdad. The Israeli aircraft actually don't penetrate Iranian airspace, except on very rare occasion. Most of their initial attacks, they come in and they're launching north and south of Baghdad before breaking off, and then their blue streak, or whatever the hell they call this thing, blue arrow. It's silver arrow. There's like 4 or 5 different versions of it. It goes flying in to do the rest of the job. We'll see. Just because Iran's getting new equipment, though, it doesn't mean that that's really helpful for Iran, because you've got to know how to use it. I mean, you let me drive a 1968 Camaro for 20 years and maintain it and know it, and then give me a Lamborghini that I've never driven before and tell me to race, I'll take the Camaro, because I'll break that Lamborghini. I won't know how to shift the gears properly. I'll do something wrong because I'm not familiar with it. So all this new equipment coming in, the Iranians really need to practice with it to work. They're smart. They have a lot of combat experience. And, the Russians and everybody else likewise have been watching the United States, so I'm sure they're flowing the intelligence in. But Israel didn't destroy as much of Iran's infrastructure as people like like the world to believe. The Iranians actually, I think, once they realized what was going on with the drones, just shut a whole bunch of stuff down and got it out of there. Because they're like, there's no reason for us to sit here and wait for a drone to come in and get us. So they shut everything down, they got it out. And that's another reason why the Israelis were operating with such freedom, because the Iranians opted to preserve capacity as opposed to sit there looking for a target while a little drone comes in. Until they solved the drone problem, it didn't make any sense to hang around. So, yes, I guess that's a long answer to, the Russians and the Chinese are stepping up. But at the end of the day, it's Iran that's defending Iran. And Iran's been preparing for this eventuality since 2005, when Dick Cheney first said, I want to take Iran out. The Iranians went, okay, how do we prepare for an American incursion? People need to understand, Iran's been preparing for more than 20 years. Iran didn't just wake up yesterday and go, oh my God, Israel and the United States might attack us, and it's been a joint effort. What do we do? Iran's been planning for this. They have underground cities. They have redundant communications. You can take Tehran could be nuked. I hope it's not, but it could be nuked. And Iran will not collapse. They will continue to function. They've built this, I forget how many, 12 or 14 military districts that are distinct, and each one is sovereign in terms of its ability to defend and launch attacks against Israel and bases. So, Iran's got this. It's nice that Russia and China are there, but neither Russia nor China are going to go to war for Iran. So people need to sort of back off on their expectations. And also, people need to be more realistic about what happened during the 12-day war. I think we give Israel far too much credit for damage that was done, and the United States, and we give Iran far too little credit for what it did defensively and how it projected its power into Israel.
The guy's too long. I'm not doing an hour and 20 of that. Scott Ritter's usually pretty spot on. Boss. Where is he? You got your close that. Yeah. Oh dear. Sturdy up there. Right on. You doing, Buffet? You know what? It's a shame all those good men being made bad in the United States military. So brainwashed they think they're defending themselves in somebody else's country. Well, I'll come to your house and pick a fight. Is that in self-defense? Brainwashed. I hope the best way I can think of to put America in their place is to sink Israel. Just poof. The United States of Israel needs to be no more.